Okay, so in this video what we're doing is we're actually moving on to solving radical equations, but in this video we're going to do it all by hand using algebra. In the next video what we're going to do is do the exact same problems that you see in this video, but we're going to solve it using a calculator. As I've said before, calculator is probably a little bit more efficient, and for a final exam that's probably the method you want to use, but you definitely want to know how to do this by hand also, because what if your calculator runs out of batteries? So let's get started. Alright, so my first example is just solve the cube root of x minus 4 equals 0. Pretty easy. Anytime you're solving a radical equation, what you need to do first is get that root by itself. So to get the root by itself, what I want to do first is just add 4 to both sides. So the cube root of x equals 4. Okay, well now I need to get rid of that. I don't want cube root of x. I got to get rid of that cube root. So cube root and cube cancel each other out. So I'm going to do cube on each side. What I do on one side, I do on the other. My index was 3, so my power has to be 3 to undo it. These two are going to cancel out, so I just have x. And since my index was odd, I only have one answer. So x equals 4 to the third power. I don't know what that is off the top of my head. I think it's 64, but let's double check using a calculator. So 4 to the third power, which is 64. Okay? So that means my x is equal to 64. Okay, and you can always double check yourself by going in and plugging in everywhere you see an x, plug in your number. In this particular problem, when you plug it in and simplify, you should get 0. Okay, let's do another example. So I want to solve 2 times x to the 3/2 power equals 250. Like I've said before, you want to get your power or your root by itself first. So in this particular example, I need to get rid of the 2. So I'm going to do that by dividing both sides. So x to the 3/2 equals 250. Okay. Well, I don't want x to the 3/2, I want x. So I've got to get rid of this 3/2 power. You might think that's pretty challenging, but actually all we're going to do is we're going to raise each side to the 2/3 power. Why the 2/3 power? Well, because if you multiply, and I'll do that in just a second, if you multiply 3/2 times 2/3, there's some scratch work on the side. What's going to happen is the 2's cancel out and the 3's cancel out. So all you're left with is x to the first. So x to the first power is equal to 250 times 250 raised to the 2/3 power, which is exactly what I want. So anytime you have a fraction power, to cancel it out, you just kind of flip the fraction and do that power on both sides. Alright, so 250 to the 2/3 power, that's okay, but let's use our calculator to try to clean that up and see if we can do better. So 250, again, our power is a fraction, so it needs to be typed in using parentheses. And I get a decimal, 39.685. Since that's such a nasty decimal, I'm going to just leave my final answer, x equals 250 to the 2/3 power. Okay? Now, if this was a problem where it said to round, then for sure do 2 decimal places. But since it didn't say to round, I'll leave my answer this way. You only want to reduce this if it comes out clean. Alright, in our last example, pretty complicated, but what we're going to do is just we only want one root per side. So what I'm going to do is just take this root that's a little bit smaller and move it to the right hand side, and I'm going to do that by adding to both sides. So 2 square root of x to both sides. It's going to cancel out over here on the left. My root of 3x plus 2 that I haven't touched is just going to fall down, and I get 2 square root of x. Okay, well, if you're paying attention to the previous videos, my index for each of these is 2. When you have regular square root, your index is always 2. To undo an index of 2, we need power 2 on both sides. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do power 2 on both sides. Now, everything on this right-hand side has to be squared, because what you do on one side, you have to do it to everything on the other side as well. So 2 and 2 cancel out, so all that's going to fall down is 3x plus 2. Here we have more than one thing on the inside, so again we're applying those properties, so we get 2 squared Here, 2 and 2 cancel out, so we have x just falls down. Well, 2 squared is just 4, so we end up with 3x plus 2 equals 4x. And now it's very similar to what we did in chapter 1. We have a variable on both sides of the equation. Our next step is to choose what side do we want our variables to be on. I want my variables to be on the right, so I need to take 3x and move over here to the right. I'm going to do that by subtracting on both sides. 2 falls down, and I end up with 1x. So my only answer here is 1x. Or sorry, 1x is equal to 2. We did several examples here. Again, in the next video, we're going to do these exact same examples, but we're going to use that graphing technique that we first learned about in chapter 1. Okay? Take your time. Make sure you understand this video. Very important.